say to their students, أدبوا أنفسكم أيها الأصحاب طرق العشق كلها آداب. That, oh my dear companions, develop in yourself good character. Because every path of love must tread the path of character. Having good morals, having good etiquette, building a relationship with anyone or anything involves that you're willing to go a little above and beyond. You're willing to show that your love has a place in your life, that you are able to show that love through your actions by pushing your limits a little bit more. And it's these adab that actually bring beauty into our relationships and also in our actions. If you remove the etiquettes from our deen, what remains? If you remove etiquettes from our relationships, what remains? We come from a culture, from a tradition where everything has a method. The way a son speaks to his father, the way you sit in the masjid, the way you walk in the market, the way you talk to your elders, the way you hold the Quran, the way you read the Quran. The more you commit to your adab, the more barakah and khair and blessings will come from those actions. The Quran has many adab. Imam Nawawi rahmatullahi alayhi has an entire book dedicated to this, At-Tibyan, in which he talks about etiquettes for those that have memorized the Quran and those who wish to build a relationship with the Quran. What are etiquettes to this? Imam Qurtubi rahmatullahi alayhi, in his famous tafsir, the muqaddimah, the introduction of it, many people sleep on it. They go straight into the tafsir looking at the ayat, which is beautiful. His explanation and commentary there is very rich. But the introduction that Imam Qurtubi rahmatullahi alayhi has to his tafsir ahkam al-Quran is profound. He has not one but many chapters dedicated to the proper etiquette of how to interact with the Quran. So many details. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran himself says, لا يمسه إلا المطهرون. Only the purified can touch it. Now there are different interpretations of this ayah of the Quran. One of the most common understandings of this ayah is أي من الجنابة والحدث. That person should touch the Quran that is free of any form of major or minor impurity. If you're not in the state of wudu, the adab of the Quran is that you don't touch it. You go and do your wudu first, and then you come back and touch the Quran. Similarly, the ulama, they say that when a person sits to do wudu, it is from the adab that you clean your mouth. If this is your body part that you're going to be using to engage with the kalam of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then there should be no foul smell. There should be no food lying around, no filth or impurity. If you look at the life of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam did miswak so many times in one day. If you actually try to count how many times the Prophet of Allah did miswak in one day, it's a lot. From the moment Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam woke up, while doing wudu, before salah, when going to the market, when doing dhikr, when entering the home, when leaving the home, just throughout the day, 20, 30 times the Prophet of Allah is doing miswak. It's something that I reflected on, that why was the Prophet of Allah doing so much miswak? Now, one aspect is Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam appreciated oral hygiene. He wanted to be clean, never wanted any foul scent emerging from his body. This is true. But another aspect of this is that the Prophet of Allah was always ready for the dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and was prepared to receive revelation from Jibreel alayhi salam. At any point, if the revelation came morning or evening, whether it came in the market or at home, the Prophet of Allah was ready because his mouth would be the entry point of the kalam of Allah into this dunya. Therefore, Imam Nawawi rahmatullahi alayhi, when he starts his adab, one of the first things he says that it is from the adab that you do miswak. That you clean your mouth before you start. Similarly, when you're reading the Quran, choose a mubarak place to read the Quran in. A clean place to read the Quran in. ويستحب أن تكون القراءة في موضع نظيف مختار. ولهذا استحب جماعة من العلماء القراءة في المسجد لكونها محصلا للنظافة وشرف البقعة ومحصلا لفضيلة أخرى وهي الاعتكاف. That's why the ulama, they said that when you sit to read the Quran, choose a clean place. Instead of sitting in a place that might be a little filthy or dirty, maybe where you sit at home is a nice place, maybe on your musalla or a special chair. And the ulama, for this reason, preferred that the Quran be recited while in the masjid. It's an honorable place, the most beloved place to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The masjid is a clean place, and also where people do i'tikaf. So while you're doing your recitation of the Quran, you have the honor of also making niyyah of i'tikaf and getting double the reward. Likewise, the ulama, they say that when a person reads the Quran, a part of those physical etiquettes that you can try to implement. And the reason why we're trying to implement these physical etiquettes is because we know that when we go out of our way physically, emotionally, it has an impact on us. Spiritually, it has an impact on us. There's a reason why we leave our homes and pray salah in jama'ah, because that physical journey, that getting a little uncomfortable, because you have to ask yourself that right now, I can be facing any direction while reading the Quran. If I choose to face the Qibla while reading the Quran, why am I going through this inconvenience? وَمَنْ يُعَظِّمْ شَعَائِرَ اللَّهِ فَإِنَّهَا مِنْ تَقْوَى. I'm doing this because it is from the symbols of Allah, the Quran, and I'm trying to honor it. I want to be a companion of the Quran. I want my actions to speak that. Therefore, the ulama, they write, فصل يستحب للقارئ في غير الصلاة أن يستقبل القبلة. Everyone knows that when you're praying salah, you should face the qibla, so your recitation will be in that direction. But even outside of salah, the ulama, they say, if you have the opportunity, the option, you should face the qibla while reading the Quran. فقد جاء في الحديث خير المجالس ما استقبل به القبلة. The best majlis is that in which a person is directed towards the qibla. Similarly, وَيَجْلِسُ مُتَخَشِّعًا بِسَكِينَةٍ وَوَقَارٍ, that it is appropriate that when a person sits, rather than fidgeting around and jumping and moving excessively, be calm, be focused. مُطْرِقًا رَأْسَهُ, with your head lowered down a little bit. Instead of having your head pointed up and possibly, being distracted, looking left or right, keep your head a little lower down, like when a person makes dua, humbling themselves in front of their Creator. وَيَكُونُ جُلُوسَهُ وَحْدَهُ في تحسين أدبه وخضوعه. And when you sit, maybe it's better for you to kind of be a little alone, and while you're sitting alone, sit in the best way possible. كجلوسه بين يدي معلمه, as if you are sitting directly in front of your teacher. Jamaluddin al-Qasimi, the famous Syrian scholar, in his ikhtisar and summary of the Ihya Ulumuddin, he writes a passage regarding the adab of the Quran. And I'm going to share that passage with you, and we will conclude today's gathering. He writes, وَهُوَ أَن يَكُونَ عَلَى الْوُضُوءِ وَاقِفًا عَلَى هَيْئَةِ الْأَدَبِ وَالسُّكُونِ. That when a person recites the Quran, ideally they should be in a standing position, in a very honorable, respectful, calm fashion. إِمَّا قَائِمًا وَإِمَّا جَالِسًا. And if you can't be standing, then sit down. مُسْتَقْبِلًا الْقِبْلَةَ, facing the qibla. مُطْرِقًا رَأْسَهُ, with your head lowered down. غَيْرَ مُتَرَبِّعٍ, without having your legs crossed. وَلَا مُتَّكِئٍ, without leaning against something. وَلَا جَالِسٍ عَلَى هَيْئَةِ التَّكَبُّرِ, and without sitting in an arrogant fashion. فَإِنْ قَرَأَ عَلَى غَيْرِ وُضُوءٍ أَوْ كَانَ مُضْطَجِعًا فِي الْفِرَاشِ فَلَهُ أَيْضًا فَضْلٌ. If a person does read the Quran without being in the state of wudu or lying in their bed, there is a virtue there as well. وَلَكِنَّهُ دُونَ ذَلِكَ, but that individual has missed out on some of the benefit by missing out on that etiquette, that adab. قال الله تعالى الذين يذكرون الله قياما وقعودا وعلى جنوبهم. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions those who remember Him while standing, while sitting, and while lying down. فَأَثْنَى عَلَى الْكُلِّ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala praised all of these people. Those that praised, those that worshiped Him and remembered Him while standing, while sitting, and those that were flat on the ground. ولكن قدم القيام في الذكر ثم القعود ثم الذكر مضطجعا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, however, praised the one standing first. And then He praised the one that was sitting. And then after that, He praised the one that was lying down. When we were young in madrasa, when we memorized the Quran, our teachers really emphasized the adab, the physical, the outer adab of the Quran. Some of this was cultural, and that's okay. We were strictly prohibited from ever considering to put the Quran on the ground. It was viewed as a great sign of disrespect. We were told by our teachers never sit in a fashion that your feet are pointed towards the Quran. This was a sign of disrespect. They would teach us that when you hold the Quran, hold it in your right hand, not your left hand. They viewed that as a sign of disrespect. That when you hold the Quran, rather than holding the Quran flat by your side, where it's in line with your behind, they would teach us to hold the Quran while wrapped around your chest, where the Quran is in contact with your heart. It was a sign of adab. And we were told that if you struggled in memorizing the Quran or building a relationship with the Quran, at least your outer appearance would testify on your behalf that this person was a lover of the Quran. Yes, a little inconvenient, but those inconveniences are worth it. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us all from the companions of the Quran. Wa sallallahu ta'ala ala sayyidina Muhammad. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
استووا. الله أكبر. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين